What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Brew Show, and welcome to Season 4. We have made it through to our 4th season, which is going to be our first season in a general election, and I'm pretty excited. We have got an incredible season ahead. Not only do we have the election coming up, but we have all the things that involve the election. We have to fight for our conservative candidates now more than ever. I know the Johnny Brew Show has been talking about Red Wave 22 since 2021, but that doesn't mean we can take it for granted, especially here in Nevada. I mean, do you hear about election problems? And I know I got to watch my language a little bit right here because we are live and I don't want to be taken down. But we have heard about election situations, investigations going on in places like Wisconsin and Arizona, as well as Georgia. You don't hear about any investigations. You don't hear about anything whatsoever really here in Nevada. And if you talk to some people, they'll say there's been a total of 20 illegitimate votes, 10 of which came from dead people and 10 of which came from people who had voted twice. According to the Secretary of State, Barbara Sigofsky, as well as all the other Democratic leaders, Sigofsky, of course, being the lone Republican, they say there was 20 illegitimate votes. If you speak with somebody from the Nevada GOP, such as maybe Alita Benson or Michael McDonald or even, Jesse Law, they'll tell you that they have evidence of up to 140,000 questionable votes. And of course, that 140,000 number does come from, people who voted twice. They count both of those votes as questionable. So maybe half of those were legit. So people are saying that either way, it's 140,000. It was a 30,000 vote total that gave Biden our 6 electoral votes. Nonetheless, it's going to be crazy. Also, we're going to tie all this nationwide news to what's going on right here in Nevada. I mean, a lot has happened since Election Day. Our final was in the middle of June. After primary day, we had that great party at John Petrick's suite over at the South Point. And since then, actually a week or two later, the FBI raided the homes of, if I'm not entirely sure, but I believe all 6 people who had sent in what are called alternate electors. Now, what is an alternate elector? It first happened, if I'm not mistaken, in 1875, I believe, or 1877, I believe, after the 1876 election, where they weren't sure or they were going to dispute who was going to win that particular election. And it was between, I have it written down right here. Where is it? Goes back to 1876 in South Carolina, where Rutherford B. Hayes was running against Tilden. And what had happened is they had a question about the electors. So they sent in alternate electors to Congress in order to say we're, protesting this thing. Tilden did end up winning. Hayes did end up winning, so it ended up becoming a moot point, but nobody investigated them. All right. In 1960 in Hawaii, they had said that Kennedy was going to win. They declared the state to Kennedy, I believe. And then they declared the state for Nixon. Kennedy's team was going to protest, and Kennedy's team drew up and sent in the alternate electors. And then eventually they declared Kennedy the winner anyway. But Kennedy had sent in alternate electors. So there was never an investigation over Kennedy sending in alternate electors, nor was there about Tilden or Hayes in 1876. All right, the Democrats have objected all 3 times that the Republicans have won in the past 20 years. That's 2001 with Al Gore and Bush. Obviously, remember everything that happened in Florida. 2005, again with Bush. And then also in 2017 with Donald Trump. And obviously, we know that it is now entirely fabricated, the story about Russian collusion, which is the number one reason why they were protesting protesting the election in the first place. So protesting elections and symbolic gestures of protest are nothing new whatsoever. All right. But right now, in June, Mike McDonald, James Hindle, Jesse Law, Eileen Rice, Sean Meehan, and James DeGrafferied all sent in representing the 6 electors of Nevada, and all 6 of them had their cell phones taken by the FBI. All right? You all heard just recently Mike Lindell just got his phone taken from the FBI while he was at a Hardee's. Right? We all know that Trump just got raided at Mar-a-Lago. All right? I had Michelle Fiore on. She was representing some people that she believed were liberty-loving, in the correct people at the Bundy Ranch, or even the Bundy relatives up in Oregon. And because of her participation in these protests, she was raided by the FBI. And it's starting to become a habit of all prominent Republicans, especially those who are supporters of Donald Trump, and the president himself also, are getting raided by the FBI. And I'm sorry, I don't care if you are a true blue Democrat, that has got to scare you. They talk about, why didn't we viciously go after Hillary Clinton and the email scandal? And some people say maybe Trump would have done that in the second term. Some people have other, ideas. But it's come to light recently that they're trying to say that there was an unwritten rule that we're not going to go after our political opponents, not because we want to foster bad things that the other party might be doing, but that is what a third world country does. That is almost the definition of a banana republic, of arresting or seizing or using the police to go after your political opponents after you've won an election. And that's why I believe that we were taking it easy on Hillary Clinton, even though we had her dead to rights. But now that this has happened, what's going to happen next? If we do have this red wave, are we going to impeach Biden like they impeached Trump in 2018 through 2020? Are we going to prosecute Hunter and Joe and Hillary for all this malfeasance because the dam has been broken? We are now going to prosecute the losers of elections. And that, even if it's Republicans doing the winning and doing the prosecuting against Democrats who definitely may deserve it, we will devolve into a banana republic. All right? 34% of Americans are not happy with the way we do our elections. 71% of Republicans. Of course, that's because we lost the last election. If we had won the last election, it would be 71% of Democrats. Only 57% of Americans believe that our election system is legit. So, I mean, it's definitely something that, even if it is on the up and up, we need our leaders to prove that to us. All right? All right. We got to get going. We have a very special guest. You see what's going on at the border with Mar-a-Lago, and what's going on at the border with Martha's Vineyard, and how Governor DeSantis has sent some of the illegal immigrants up to what was a sanctuary state. All right? We have somebody joining us who's running for Congress. He's actually running for the second time because he knows that he was meant for this position. We're joined with Sam Peters. How you doing, Sam?
Hey, Johnny Brew. I'm well, sir. How are you tonight?
Very, very, very good. When I saw this story, you were the first person I thought of. I know you're running on a strong border policy. DeSantis just recently sent 50 illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard, and they're saying that they're overwhelmed when thousands, at least hundreds of people are coming into some of these small Texas towns all the time, and they've been screaming they're overwhelmed for going on 2 years now. They finally took these people to a military base in Cape Cod. I wanted to see, what do you think about, the way not only the Democrats are responding to this problem, but about the way this whole system has been going for the past 2 years?
Yeah, Johnny, highlighting this is incredibly important in this election cycle, and it cannot go away. The way this has unfolded God bless Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis for highlighting this in the way they have and pointing out and bringing to the forefront the hypocrisy of this Democrat Party. Look, I was down at the southern border in the El Paso region a few weeks ago, meeting with Border Patrol agents, meeting with business owners, meeting with ranchers, one of the sheriffs down on the border, talking about this issue, talking about the problems that are being created, and the overarching theme from every one of those groups of people I just mentioned was, to fix this, just enforce the current law. The administration has completely turned their back on the United States Code, the Constitution, and all of the things that they are responsible for to keep America safe and to do what's right for our country. They've turned their back on the American people. The Border Patrol agents, they tell me very clearly that the U.S. attorneys that are supposed to be prosecuting crimes are absolutely out to lunch. They're not prosecuting. They're not charging anybody. They're simply processing these people. And quite frankly, the majority of our southern border is going unguarded because the Border Patrol agents are being used as processing agents. All they're doing is processing. They're not arresting. They're not deporting. It's an absolute sham. And again, God bless DeSantis and Governor Abbott for having the guts to do what they're doing and point out the hypocrisy.
To be literal about it, though, what are these governors supposed to do? I mean, if it's federal law and it's not their department, but they're letting all these illegal immigrants flood into these small towns, they're busting them, doing all these things. Right. What are they supposed to do, and why aren't they exclusively going to sanctuary cities?
Yeah, they're supposed. That's exactly what they're supposed to do, and under their authorities as governors of their states, they are supposed to activate their national guards. They're supposed to help each other out where the federal government has failed. And the attorney generals, I think 18 of them have signed on to a letter. That it looks like they're going to sue the federal government for not doing these jobs. And again, I'm running for Congress here in District 4. The problems that we're seeing, Martha's Vineyard and these sanctuary cities, those problems are, they're being highlighted by those two governors, but the problems are not absent here in Nevada either. And this is something that I'm highlighting along the way. Just a few weeks ago, 56 pounds of fentanyl was taken off the streets by the Nevada Highway Patrol. God bless them for doing their job. 56 pounds of fentanyl, enough to kill 28 million people. 56 pounds. It takes 2 pounds to kill 500,000 people, and they took out 56 pounds of this stuff off our streets. A few weeks before that, I believe it was the Mesquite Police Department took another 30 pounds off our streets.
These are the number one killers of our youth right now. I mean, it used to be it's number one. I mean, it's literally an epidemic. I mean, forget about COVID. What this country went through when we had a handful, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 at the most, teenagers dying from COVID. We closed the schools down. We have hundreds of thousands of our youth dying every year from fentanyl. I mean, it's truly an epidemic.
It really is. It really is. And the overarching reality of this scenario and this situation we find our country in is the dereliction of our president of the United States to fulfill his constitutional responsibility to provide security for all of our states. He's not doing it. He's turning his back on it. His vice president's doing it as well. The Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Mayorkas, he's doing the same thing. And it's shameful. It's putting people's lives in danger, and it's destroying our country.
Well, if the people of Nevada hire you to be the plumber, I know you're going to turn the water off first. But how are we going to undo the damage? I mean, we're talking about 5 million people who have come in. And, God bless, some of them are good people. I mean, it's horrible. But do we let them stay? Do we kick them out? I mean, this is going to be irreversible.
Yeah, so we have to enforce the current law. And the current law is that these people should not be, they entered our country in an illegal manner. Many of them hired, and again, like you said, I'm not saying these are bad people, but they disrespected our law coming in. They disrespected our country by breaking the law the way they came into our country. They should be removed from our country and try again, period.
And then one other aspect I wanted to discuss with you before I let you go is they're hanging literally thousands of panties in the trees to show the rapes of these girls to the Border Patrol. They're finding, I think they just passed over 1,000 over since Biden took office. 1,000 dead bodies found within 5 miles of the border from, a dozen different reasons, from being killed by the cartel to, starving to death or dying in the Rio Grande. I mean, the humanitarian effort, they're talking about DeSantis sending them by charter flight to Martha's Vineyard being like Auschwitz. But meanwhile, the death and carnage is disgusting on the southern border.
It is. It is disgusting. And I'll leave you with this little story. And I learned this from a Border Patrol agent. There was a 14-year-old girl that was walking the path to come on into the country. She ultimately made it into the country, but she had a string wrapped around her left bicep area, and there was a little box that was attached to it. And one of the male Border Patrol agents, and this girl she was 14, she was from Guatemala, she spoke fairly good English, but she wouldn't talk to the male Border Patrol agent. So that Border Patrol agent stepped away. Some female Border Patrol agents started to engage her and to try and find out what was in the box and what was strapped to her arm. And what was strapped to her arm was the Plan B pill to provide herself with an abortion after she was raped numerous times along the trail. That's the reality of what's happening at the southern border and the people who are being trafficked into our country. This is what young kids are being put through, and this is all going back on the administration and this Congress that is just doing nothing to make the executive branch do what they're responsible for our country.
Yeah.
And it's going to change. It's going to change November 8th.
Yeah, that's ungodly, and God bless you, Sam. We wish you the best of luck. How's the campaign going?
Things are good. We're getting out knocking doors. We had a great knocking day today. We had people on the phones today. Talked to some great people across the district out there. We had lots of volunteers on the streets. Things are going good. Always opportunities to get involved. You can do that. You can go through my website, sampeters4congress.com, and let me know. Let my folks know that you want to get involved, and we can certainly do it. It's a race to the finish. We're 35 days from early voting, 52 days from election day, and it's all hands on deck. All the way through the tape.
Well, it's very, very exciting stuff. Of course, we're rooting for you, and we hope to see you soon here on the Johnny Brew Show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, brother.
All right, Sam, thanks. And, as I'm, getting off the phone with Sam, you guys got to realize that here in Nevada, right here in 2019, before COVID, before any of these things were going on, they said that in Clark County here, where Las Vegas is, we have a 16% of our population is undocumented or illegal immigrants. When you think about rent prices, obviously if we had 16% less people here, rent would be a lot more reasonable. It'd be a lot easier to find a place to, live at a reasonable price. Number two, 20% of Clark County School District students are, children now aren't necessarily undocumented or illegal, but come from illegal or undocumented families. That's 1 in 5 children. So as you look at overcrowding in our schools, as you look at our resources being worn thin, I teach children, and I'm sure some of them are undocumented, and I love them, and I would do anything to try to help them. But as a governmental bureaucratic policy as a whole, it's just unsustainable to, obviously the taxpayers are taking care of the roads, the schools, and everything else. And the healthcare and education of 1 in 5 people that aren't supposed to be here is obviously an undue burden. And as we go through these times of inflation and stuff, it's something to think about even more closely. And the humanitarian side, so on and so forth. But now let's change gears. Because, I wanted to talk about unity. So usually, and it's really, really funny. It's just a little bit of comedy right here. I always, every time I start the Johnny Brew Show, whether it's at the old studio, the old studio, or even our new studio, we're Republicans, and I love the color red, and it's red, white, and blue, and yada, yada, yada. But every time I come into the studio, I always start off with the red lights. And I always think it's so cool. But then when I look at it on camera, I realize it looks like I'm coming to you from hell. And I love the red, and I think it looks cool. And everything, but I never ever use it because I realize how evil it looks right now. Joe Biden went with it. I can't believe they went with that. That's all I have to say about that. How about blue? You know, the blue's nice. I know it's the Democrat color, but it's red, white, and blue, right? They don't own the color blue. All right. Now, moving on. We have got a murder mystery and more than one. I mean, Lake Mead is going down. We're finding out about all the mob hits from the 70s and 80s. That's where we got the term. I don't know if you guys know this, but we got the term 86 from Vegas. It was originally a term that meant 8 miles out and 6 feet deep, unless, of course, you owned a boat, because then you would just go to Lake Mead and drop them off. Well, there is some political murder mysteries going on, and it's really no laughing matter. All right? There's a Review Journal writer named Herman who has been writing and covering political and mob-related activities for decades here in Las Vegas, originally with the Sun and now with the Review Journal. And he was covering the public administrator's office and stories about indecent relationships, favoritism, and unhealthy work environments. And it may have led to this guy losing the election in the primary. And then, apparently, this guy Tellis went and murdered the journalist Herman. And it's all over surveillance. It's not all over the news as it should be. So to get the inside scoop, we're going to be joined with Brittany Sheehan. She's a writer for Red State, and she has been following this story closer than anyone. Welcome to the show, Brittany.
Hi, Johnny. Thank you.
So, how's everything going working with Red State? You've been with Red State for how long now?
I don't know. I lost track. I like working with Red State. They're really good to me. I like my colleagues. They're just great minds and very supportive of each other, which I love.
All right. Well, I heard that this guy Tellis comes from a long line of politicians, especially in El Paso, Texas. Apparently, his grandfather was famous because he was showing the Mexican women how to use their rosary beads and count how far down the voting machine to vote for all the Democrats or something like that. They had all these ways to get the Democratic vote out. They moved to Las Vegas, and he won the, just like his lineage, his father, his grandfather, he took office, public office, won an election, and just like a lot of his family, he seems to be leaving in disgrace. He was first arrested in 2020. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, they've released videos on Thursday, and he appears to be intoxicated in those videos, and he's arguing, I wouldn't say arguing, I guess he got charged with resisting a public officer, but he's asking, you know, who did I hit? And like, you're just trying to take me down because I'm a public official. So the issue is, when Tellis got to court, they told him to take a corrective thinking course and to stay out of trouble, and the case was dismissed last year.
So it was one of those things where they just say, go take a class and, you know, we'll let you go this time?
Well, absolutely. And I guess I'm not familiar with what the regular protocol is to make the comparison to say that they were lenient or not. But what I'm saying is, you have someone with a propensity of violence and you tell them, stay out of trouble, kid, you know, and then he goes on to murder somebody. So we had the red flag. If we had the opportunity to do an intervention, and possibly because he's a sitting public official that's part of this power structure, it's a slap on the wrist, and that didn't help society, and that didn't help the victim's family, and it didn't help Tellis' children that now have to suffer from his choices.
Well, now it sounds like when justice wasn't served in the way that maybe, you know, it seems like recidivism and repeat offenders and, you know, all the crime that's going on, it seems to be people who may or may not have been able to have been incarcerated at the time. But
I want to differentiate domestic violence, because this is an issue that's important to me. Domestic violence isn't the same as stealing something that might have an economic motive. maybe you couldn't pay a bill and you felt you had to do this. So a lot of crime is driven by economics, okay? But domestic violence isn't. It shows us something very different in a person. It shows us the want to control, to dominate, right? And to inflict harm on the people closest to you that trust you, you know. So I think let's just be specific about what that crime is compared to maybe like a random act of like I stole something.
Right, and I see your point because, you know, just like I would love to see people who are nonviolent offenders be released from jail. I'm not looking to lock every single person up in the world, but if you're a violent person, and domestic violence is, like you said, the most inexcusable because there's no reason. It's just a power play. It's not something that you're doing to feed your family or to make a living. But it sounds like Herman was looking for that justice that they didn't get from the courts. He was investigating, tell us. I also heard that people were saying that he was having an inappropriate relationship with Roberta Lee Kinnett, one of his staffers, and this led Rita Reed, his top supervisor, you know, not his supervisor, but underneath him, one of the top supervisors for the office, ran and won the Democratic primary, and apparently, Tellis may have blamed Herman?
I believe he absolutely did. This is the motive that's being purported, and this is his victim, and it's, you know, he had a lot of internet activity, too, where he's tweeting or putting out public letters. So it's not confusing that he blamed this guy for either his bruised ego or what he felt was a loss in his life. The thing is, this guy's a lawyer. It's not like, what am I going to do now? There's always legal work. So I feel like it was more of an ego thing for him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he sounds like he comes from a family that's part of the system, and he could get a job as, you know, an appointee. I mean, he's been appointed by Sisolak in the past, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, and he got a salary with that. I'm almost certain. I believe I associated with that. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But like, he still had a state salary. He was still making his salary from the county, and he's actually considered a good lawyer. Like, he was pro bono lawyer. You know, he did get appointed by the government, probably because he knew what he was doing in a courtroom. So I don't think that it was economic. I think this was very much his ego.
Pride. It sounds like he got his pride stolen, which is sometimes more important, especially to a narcissist, right? Were you able to see the interview from jail or his arraignment and appearance? He seems odd. Like, he called for the reporters to come talk to him, but then he didn't say anything about anything. When he showed up for his arraignment, he had this wry smile, like really like, you know, kind of like psychopathic smile when he's being brought up on murder charges. Do you have any feedback from those two things?
Well, I'm not like a psychologist, but I've met a narcissist too. So like I do analyze the traits that people are showing. So I couldn't tell you if Tellis is playing it up, like he thinks this is his 15 minutes of fame,
right?
Or
it's
that
cool.
he needs to put on this psycho. I don't know. He's an attorney too. He might be trying to get off on temporary insanity. You don't know why he's doing it, but we can agree that he was smiling, right? And that his presence didn't. For me, and I know you're a parent and I'm a parent, even if I felt for some reason that I was okay with a crime I committed, I would still feel bad for my children. And I wouldn't be so prideful in that way. Like, hey, I just destroyed my family. Let me have a little compassion. You know what I'm saying?
And it appears he tried to kill himself right before being arrested.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of commentary on that. Who knows if it's authentic or a stunt or... I don't know.
Did you see, like, he was chopping up the hat and his shoes? Like, he cut them in half as if, like, he was destroying evidence. But obviously that's not, like, cutting a pair of sneakers in half doesn't, like, cease them from existing. It was really bizarre.
He's very bad at being a criminal.
Walking around with that outfit.
There's more skillful ones around, okay? But he had days, though. Like, he had a lot of time to get rid of evidence. Like, he got arrested Wednesday. He did it Friday. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it took forever to get rid of evidence. So I think if we're going to go from a narcissistic perspective, that their ego blinds them. they can't. They're untouchable. They're invincible people, you know, and perfect people. So if you want to go from, and also people who think like that don't really, from what I've read, because I don't have a degree in this, they don't really commit suicide. So it could have been a stunt, or I don't know. But I think the guy screwed up his head. He has all the signs to show it, and you know, he's going to try to make this the trial of the century.
Right.
And I hope it's case closed.
Well, the mainstream media is burying it. I'm sure he hates that. But I feel like we could talk about the story for an hour. But just recently, they came out with this old guy that used to be a county commissioner or something like that, is getting arrested for like a 40-year-old murder where he stabbed somebody 60 times or something. And do you see a connection between all the politics and all the murder and maybe Lake Mead losing its water? Are they all tied in?
Within 1 week, so he was the ex-deputy attorney general back in the 70s, okay? And when we had a governor that went on to be senator, and he was a Democrat, and they have a statue of him at UNLV, and his name is Richard Bryan. And he worked under Richard Bryan in the AG's office. And so he went on to try to run for the Supreme Court, and he lost because he had to spend 8 days in jail for child support right before that, so the voters didn't like it. But so he murdered this girl in Hawaii 50 years ago, stabbed her 60 times, and they just came up with the DNA evidence and took him in this week. So within a week's time, we've had two either current or former public officials be brought up on murder charges. And it's terrifying. You know, I want to hilariously quote McConnell about candidate quality. I'm going, who are these people and how are they getting into office? And does it relate to that psychology where these people need so much attention and can never be wrong and see themselves and want, lust for those power positions? So for me, it's very terrifying as we watch all of our election season and, you know, people willing to lie and manipulate voters, and they have the same motive. So as Nevadans, it's easy to get creeped out, you know? And obviously we are just like barely scratching the surface. I know you're writing some really in-depth articles. Where can people read your articles? They let that other guy go too. He had a domestic violence arrest in 1995, and they let him off. Actually, the Washoe district attorney at the time, their office did an investigation. He had tied his girlfriend up with tape on her legs and her hands and her mouth and threatened her with scissors and tried to sexually assault her and all this stuff. And he didn't even have to appear in the courtroom. And not only did they dismiss the charges, they said they should have never filed them. And they dismissed with prejudice, so it could never come back up, and then sealed the records. So what it teaches us is that absolutely we're letting these public officials get away with these domestic violence acts, and they're predictors of homicides. And we're finding out later, we let these would-be murderers walk.
Well, the world is changing, and we're getting the technology, we're getting the transparency, for better or worse. It's gonna come. And I know we're just scratching the surface. You're writing very in-depth articles about all this stuff, including the races here in Nevada for Red State. Where can people read your material?
Oh, yeah, you can just go to redstate.com, and of course we're on the social media platforms as well. And if you want to find articles specific to me, you can just hit authors and then my name, Brittany Sheehan. So it's really easy to find what I'm up to and what I'm writing about, and I'm always posting that shit. That stuff.
Oh my gosh! Boop! The producer was not ready with the beep.
I'm thinking of the word link, and it just came out weird. So you can find my handle is brutalbrittany2 on Twitter.
And we don't have enough time to find out why your nickname is Brutal Brittany. We're gonna have to save that for next time.
You have to ask my dad.
Well, that would be quite the conversation. All right, Brittany. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be talking to you soon, and thanks for writing those articles.
All right, bye, Johnny.
All right, so long. All right, guys, and now we have to move on to another story, all right? They talk about rhinos, are people who are called Republicans in name only. Now, I don't know what your definition of a rhino is. I think originally it was like deep state people who have an R next to their name, but they're more deep state than they are Republican. But then, when you get into this election cycle, in the 90s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s, I had similar beliefs as I do now, but I wasn't so fervent about it, and I didn't view the Democrat Party as, non-patriotic, right? So you could vote Democrat or Republican. You could vote for the best candidate, especially when I was younger and a little bit more naive. But this day and age, it's now like war. We're fighting for the soul of our nation. Now, you can't be like, oh, I like this guy even though he's a Democrat, right? I mean, if you would call yourself a Democrat, that means you're buying into the Green New Deal. You're buying into the interventionism with Ukraine and, the open border or the restorative justice, no bail, recidivism, lack of, taking care of crime. So it's now you can't identify as a Democrat, at least as far as I'm concerned. Yet we have lifelong Republicans, mainstays here in Nevada, that represent the Republican Party here in Nevada on the national scale, publicly endorsing Democrats for really important offices. So what I did is I invited Chris Dyer. He's the host of the PAA podcast. He's been part of the Clark County Republican Party for about 14 or 16 years now, and he's worked and spoken with a lot of the players who are being talked about in this particular story, most particularly Amy Tarkanian, with the likes of people like Mark Roberson and Peter Ornott. Do we have Chris Dyer on? All right. Well, welcome, Chris. I know that you are a fan of Amy Tarkanian. You have worked with these people from Michelle Fiore to Sigal Chattah to Amy Tarkanian, Danny Tarkanian. How did you feel when you first heard that your old friend Amy Tarkanian was endorsing people for positions as important as treasurer and attorney general?
My feelings were hurt because Michelle Fiore had endorsed my campaign for assembly, and my friend Amy did not even know I was running. She considers herself a political pundit, but she wasn't aware of who was at the top of the assembly ballot, that was her old buddy Chris.
Yeah, she's on Fox News and Newsmax. I'm sure she could have helped you get over the hump. You lost by only 40 votes, I think.
40 votes. So, yeah, I blame myself most of all for not doing the work, but I think Amy Tarkanian could have definitely got me closer.
But this isn't about Chris Dyer. This is about Amy. So when Amy started doing this, and then she got the Republicans for Ford, I think it was called, a campaign against Sigal Chattah. And then...
I know it's not about me, but, I mean, I am one of the symptoms of what Amy is doing. She seems to be trying to play both sides. I don't know if she's always been that way either. But there's always been people in the Republican Party. You said, I think you described neocons with what you were describing. Rhinos are really people that run for office or are active in the party, but then take the political capital that they build up, like a Steve Sanson or an Amy Tarkanian, and then endorse Democrats because they've somehow been personally affronted by the Republican that's running.
Yeah, but when you bring up somebody like Steve Sanson, who's veterans in politics, even though I still think we're in this, psychological or societal political war with, the Republicans versus the Democrats, he's still representing veterans in politics. Amy Tarkanian is married to the chair of the Douglas County, or the vice chair of the Douglas County.
They're two separate people. He's not the chair. He's one of the commissioners. But they're two separate people. Don't get them conflated. Amy can comment on whatever she wants to. Same as Steve. But they're both active Republicans, and they're very influential within Republican circles. So when Amy takes her political capital, because she's a commentator and has, insight on these candidates that other people don't have. She knows the little matches between Victoria and Michelle, like me.
Right. She also has the exposure, though, to the national audience.
I don't endorse Democrats. I stay quiet about, when we're in the general, you won't hear me say a bad thing about these Republicans unless they do something that I think is philosophically against what I believe in, putting their kids in ads and stuff like that. But I'm not going to endorse their opponent because of that. I'll never say, this
well,
guy's
even right now, like in the past, I've leaned Republican, but now I go to the meetings. I'm trying to help the Republican Party. I'm doing everything I can for the Republican brand because I think it's what we need, And there's Republican candidates that are not my favorite people in the whole wide world. There's people who won the primary that I may not have voted for. And I just know I don't want to damage the brand. And for example, if I'm going to vote for, say, Joe Lombardo, it doesn't do me or anybody else any good for me to tell you all the reasons why I wish he wasn't the candidate, but then I'm going to vote for him. If I'm going to vote for him, he's my horse. And I need to just talk good about him or not talk about him at all.
You've built political capital, and it's your prerogative where you want to spend it. So, yeah, I mean, if you decide to start endorsing Democrats, we're going to start calling you a rhino because you've been in these Republican circles and you've built up that capital here. If Joey Gilbert doesn't want to spend his political capital on Joe Lombardo, that's fine. But he shouldn't go and say, vote for the third party guy or vote for the Democrat.
But I'm even saying, hypothetically speaking, some lawyer from Reno runs for governor as a Republican, and then 2 years later he's going to endorse a Democrat, or 4 years ago he paid an attorney general who was a Democrat some money because he's a lawyer. Amy Tarkanian is like a 14-year Republican leader. Like, she's Republican. Again, like Steve Sanson and even Joey Gilbert.
I've been around for 15 years. The Tarkanian name has been around even longer than, they were active before I came around because Lois Tarkanian, Danny's mom, is a famous Democrat. So, they don't have a problem being bipartisan, but Danny doesn't endorse Democrats. Only Amy does that. I don't know. It's just her angle, I guess, now.
Well, I was really disappointed. I mean, we need a red wave. And, Aaron Ford is a typical George Soros attorney general. I don't know what she's got this bone to pick with Michelle
rigged,
Fiore.
We're going to find out that people like Amy cost us elections when we...
If Sigal Chada loses by 2,000 votes?
Yep. You're going to say, well, okay, that was Amy. Or that was, Roberson, Michael Roberson.
Right.
That piece of crap that keeps circling back around every now and then.
All right. Well, I know we could talk about this a lot more, but I'm running out of time. I really appreciate you giving us your unique insight on this. And why don't you tell everybody about your podcast and where they could find it?
Sure. 10 o'clock live on Facebook. We do the Nevada Integrity Project and the United States Integrity Project. Thanks to Joey Gilbert for getting that started for us. And then at 11 o'clock every Saturday night, we do the PAA podcast. So a full night on Saturday nights. Now it's Johnny Brew, it's Integrity, and then right into PAA.
All right. Sounds like a full lineup. I'm looking forward to seeing you tonight.
All right, man. Thanks.
Later, Chris. All right, guys. And then every single week, we're going to make sure we do something to highlight education. All right? And all of you guys know, homeschooling is absolutely exploding. People are realizing, A, the public schools are not offering exactly what they thought they were offering. And number two, that maybe that they are more capable to teach their kids. Maybe they are as smart as a fifth grade teacher. Maybe not as smart as a fifth grader, but as smart as a fifth grade teacher. Well, we're lucky enough to have a candidate for the Clark County, it's easy for you to say, I'm sorry, the Clark County School District trustee, Greg Wieman, and this portion is going to be brought to you by Infinity the Math Institute. Play a tape.
Infinity the Math Institute. Don't get more math problems, get solutions.
All right. So without further ado, we're going to be bringing on Greg Wieman. He's got a campaign right now to be a trustee for the Clark County School District. And to be honest, of all 6 candidates that are running right now, he is far and away the most conservative, as the other 5 candidates are definitely left-leaning or far-left candidates. So running against Linda Cavazos will be Greg Wieman. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Hey, Johnny. Good.
It's good to see you. How's everything going with the campaign?
Well, I'm finding out it's more political than I would have wanted. I'm an educator, not a politician. I'm a novice, but I think we can all agree we'd have some changes at the board level.
Well,
and
I find
particularly
it
in
crazy
district.
that every single incumbent won their primary, number one, and then number two, the fact that this is supposed to be a nonpartisan race, and you're telling me it's very, very political.
Well, as you know, you had some of the other candidates on your show earlier with me in the spring. There were 5 other candidates. 4 of them are Republicans and 1 Democrat. I will tell you confidently that all 5 of them support my candidacy. So when you're splitting up a vote that's pretty negative toward the incumbent, that's kind of what you end up with.
And to be honest, I'm kind of new to this political sphere as well. Just like you, I'm trying to get my feet wet here, and I'm finding some blame in myself. Not that I'm a kingpin or anybody even cares what I think, but when I was meeting you guys, I wish I had the foresight to realize that, some of you, luckily you did get through, but what if, another Democrat squeaked through like they did in the other races, such as the Brenda Zamora and Irene Cepeda race? If we were able to consolidate, say, have a couple of debates like we did, and you did seem to be the most qualified when we had those debates. Everybody had some great ideas, and the motivation behind all those candidates was true, but you seem to be the best candidate. In the future, or maybe in 2024, I'm thinking maybe the 5 of us need to come to an agreement to, all right, let's step down and support Greg, or let's step down and support, so that way we only have, Tavora Elliott maybe getting those 5,000 votes. If she had stepped down a week earlier, maybe that would have gotten the other person over the hump.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If 4 years from now, and I'm seated, and the performance of the district isn't much better, you won't have that problem, because I would be embarrassed to run on a record like the incumbent and what's happened the last 4 years.
Well, I just heard recently in the news that Jara is posturing for his new contract. I'm sure he's looking for a raise. He's only making $360,000 now, with $420,000 a year with bonuses. So I know he's probably going to want to raise inflation, everything else. So what are your feelings about Jara?
Well, there hasn't been accountability across the district at all levels. And it's up to the board to set performance goals and that are measurable and attainable, and then hold our one employee to those, and the whole district and ourselves accountable for performance.
If you had to put a number on it, which is kind of a stupid game, but where would you put the percentage of blame between the board and the superintendent with the mire that we are in? Do you think this is a board problem? Effort. Do you think Jara's been able to do what he wants to do, or?
Like I said, it's been a team effort. There's certainly been a lot of poor decisions, poor policies, lack of oversight. I question whether, I have to think that most of our teachers and administrators, support staff are all effective employees. At the same time, have we taken their decision-making out of their hands? We have to empower those people to do the best thing for kids. And I'm not sure we've done that.
Right. I believe more power should go to the schools, less top-heavy with the power structure.
Well, you have to hold, the top is responsible for everything. When I was superintendent, I was responsible for every decision, every person, negative or positive, that went on in the district. That was my role.
Right.
And you have to take on that. If I'm seated on the board, I will immediately inherit all the responsibility for every decision they've made up to that time. So I then inherit any poor performances happen.
Well, are you worried?
So
I mean, I did want to get to this story, and we're talking about your campaign because it's so interesting. But, I mean, you notice like Katie Williams won her election, and she hasn't really been able to have much of an effect. Are you worried that you're going to be like Katie Williams, sitting there just being a little bit of an annoyance, a little bit of a hindrance through the muck and mire?
Well, we have to get away from the politics in education. We can't use children as political pawns. We have to base it on educational decisions. We need an educational leader, not a politician in the superintendency. I'm about effective performance. And I think I know what works and what doesn't. Hopefully I can persuade the board and, again, have a positive influence where right now we have no voice because there's no working relationship between the incumbent trustee and G and the superintendent. So
Right.
It's a loss of voice. What you get when you're lost like that is symbolic votes. So Katie has to come along on something. We have to have consensus decisions. Everything shouldn't be 4-3, 3-4. And we have to think those things out. And it's going to be that we're going to have to digest issues rather than just blindly accept whatever's passed on us. We have to question things. We have to allow input from the community. And until we do that, we're not going to make very good decisions.
Yeah, and the reason a report recently came out, I mean, you're in a funny position because I'm assuming that you're pro-school choice, but you're going to try to make CCSD the best school it could possibly be to be the school of choice. People are increasingly moving to homeschool. Pre-pandemic, it was steady. Less than 3% of children steady for years, decades, were doing the homeschool. During the pandemic, it spiked up to almost 20%, and they're saying it hasn't come down as far as they would have thought or much at all. And they're also saying among the population of homeschool students, they were 3% pre-pandemic, and now black students are making up over 16% of homeschooling students. So it looks like the African American community is starting to like the ideas of homeschooling as well. What do you think about this trend as an educator? Does it worry you? Does it encourage you? You think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, first of all, charter schools are already there. They're established. My job is not to dismantle CCSD. My job would be to improve it. I relish the competition as a principal with charter schools, private schools. My job was to make sure that our school was attractive to students and parents. And in every single case, as I took over as a principal, we had a negative choice flow. We had more kids going out than coming in. Within a year or two, we reversed those in every single school. But you do that by presenting a safe, cordial, productive learning environment. You have common behavioral expectations for everybody in the building. And then you can go on achievement because nothing's going to improve until we get control of our environment. There's a lot of reasons people choose to homeschool. I mean, there's religious reasons, there's pandemic reasons, there's all kinds of reasoning behind it. It usually doesn't last, and here's why. Because when you get to chemistry, there aren't many parents who can teach chemistry.
Right, or algebra 2.
If you studied homeschoolers, about 20% of the parents are certified teachers. So that means 4 out of 5 are not. And eventually their lack of content knowledge is going to catch up with it. They also are going to offer the extracurriculars, the music, the art, athletics. They don't have, obviously, facilities. So at some point, they're going to want to send their kids back.
So what would be best is having a school that we could trust the adults to give a good education and that great childhood experience.
Absolutely. Kids need 2 things, Johnny. They need to know you care about them, and they need to know that you want them to succeed. If that's not present in every building, we're not going to get those kids back. They're going to opt out for other alternative.
Well, I like that a
And
lot.
we should,
I mean,
in some
I'm
parents-
really hard on the kids all the time, but they know I care about them, so I'm able to have that high expectation. I'm able to yell at them when it's time to yell at them.
well,
All
I
right,
think
Greg,
both of
listen,
you
I'm
and
sorry
I
to
are
cut you
old
off, but
school
we're out of
educators.
time. Can you tell everybody how they could find out more about your campaign?
Okay. Well, you can go to gregwieman.com. I think if you do that, you explore my candidacy versus my opponent, it's pretty obvious that we need to change. And I think my support has been pretty universal. I have support from Republican groups, Democratic groups, and independents. And everybody, the common thread has been we need to change the leadership at the Board of Trustee level and then work our way down through the district through our superintendent.
Well, I promise you that of the 6 candidates, you are the Johnny Brew Show's favorite candidate, and we hope we see you at least a couple more times before the election.
I might put that on my cards. Johnny Brew's favorite candidate.
Well, there you go, man. I mean, I don't endorse candidates, but that's the closest thing you're ever going to get. You are definitely my favorite.
I appreciate it, Johnny, and anytime you want to talk education, you know I love being on your show.
You got it. I'll be in touch then, Greg. Godspeed.
All right.
Good luck.
Thank you, Johnny.
Have a good one.
Bye.
All right, guys. So that was Greg Wieman running in District G against Linda Cavazos for the CCSD Board of Trustees. And there you go, guys. That's episode 1 of season 4 in different format. You know, I'm not quite, Fox News over here, and I'm not quite the Joe Rogan show, which I used to kind of try to be with those long form things. But please, guys, let me know what you think. Let me know what I could do better. Let me know what more the Johnny Brew Show can do for you guys to bring you the information and the stories you want to hear. I need you guys. Now listen, I'm always pulling because I get the most views on Facebook and YouTube. But you know what? They haven't been as good to me as Rumble and Spotify. So I just want to give a big shout out to Rumble and to Spotify. They have never ever censored anything I've done. They've never said boo. And both of those platforms have opened up accounts. I mean, I only get a penny per view or something. But immediately, like YouTube, you got to get like 10,000 subscribers before they even let you sniff a dime. Facebook, they ain't giving me no money unless you send me stars, like you literally send me the money. Spotify and Rumble. I have a couple of bucks in both those accounts because they automatically pay me. Have never censored me. I know it's not as user friendly, but we're going to have to start making a transition to a parallel economy because as you heard, Facebook was giving all our messenger data to all the other governments, like to our government, and TikTok is working with the Chinese government, and we're going to have to start protecting ourselves and doing business with each other. And companies like Rumble or Spotify should be commended, and hopefully they could get their user interface better. So that way we could really take advantage. Because I do know Facebook and YouTube, they're a lot easier on the thumbs, if you know what I mean. All right, also on Facebook, when you're on the Johnny Brew Show page or Common Sense Nevada or the new CCSD Board of Trustees 2022 and 24, I need to come up with a new name. I'll take some suggestions. Now, don't only subscribe, you gotta hit the like button. There's people that I know are my biggest fans that are subscribed, but they didn't hit the like button. So you also have to hit the like button if you don't mind. And finally, to finish off the show, I started talking to an old friend of mine again. I was going to say an old high school friend, but he's actually an old elementary school friend. I've known this guy since 2nd or 3rd grade. And he's doing some he's doing some production for the Western Journal. And he's also taking some classes. And for homework, he's got to write political comedy every week. And some of the jokes are funny and some of them are, fulfilling his 10-joke quota. But I got a real kick out of it. I'm going to share it with you guys. And if you guys like it, I'll try to talk him into doing it every week. Or he's an old friend of mine. You could tear him a new one if it's no good. But I like it. This is my friend, Andrew Gordon with the Conservative Schmear. And he works with the Western Journal. Play tape.
Candace Owens has slammed singer Lizzo and the fat acceptance movement, saying eating Oreos and drinking Cokes all day is not going to make you a happy individual. Lizzo is unavailable for comment as she was testing out the strength of her new stage. The NFL has unveiled its second annual Por la Cultura event celebrating Latino Heritage Month. Jill Biden has thrown her support behind Hispanic players, saying, "I love the way those tacos tackle." An LA school district has posted a woke video about food neutrality, claiming junk food isn't bad. Apparently in their cafeteria, a Snickers identifies as a carrot. GoFundMe is holding a fundraiser to keep a Portland Antifa rioter out of jail. 38-year-old Phoebe Loomis says she just wants the whole thing to get over with so she can get back to what she does best, spraying people with bear mace. CNN has canceled Don Lemon Tonight, but will be giving the host a new morning show. The tentative title is Serial Liar. A Delaware judge has ruled the Democrats' vote-by-mail law unconstitutional and is prohibiting it in November. Angry Dems insist that everyone should have the right to cheat, even those voters who can't make it to the polls.
All right, guys. And there's just a few people I gotta thank, and I'm not gonna remember anybody, so please bear with me. But for example, my beautiful wife has been so patient, and I'm such a pain in the butt to work with, if, believe it or not. Dr. John Petrick, he's been such a good supporter of the show. I support his campaign. I'm not his friend. I'm not bought out. I support John Petrick because I think he's a great guy, a great candidate, and I've met a lot of people, and he is one of the best of the best. And that's why, I'm always going to be pushing him. I want to thank, Chris Dyer. He's always been helping me. He's been around for a long time. So he gives me the ins and outs. And, I understand some people might not like him, but I like him. Natalie is always helping me. Anytime I need a favor, I ask Natalie. She does it right away. Brittany Sheehan. Who else do I need to thank? Rob Kafka, the Patriot Impact. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, guys. I have just leapfrogged #1, and the Johnny Brew Show, is now the #1 conservative podcast in Nevada. Welcome to season 4. Who else do I have to thank? Our guests, Sam Peters, Greg Wieman, and Brittany Sheehan and Chris Dyer. I already thanked them. All right, and also, Infinity is now entirely virtual. You can visit us anywhere in the world at themathinstitute.com. We have Infinity, the Math Institute, and we have Infinity, the Math Institute Bolivia, and we are available worldwide in 3 or 4 different languages. Live tutoring also helps with physics, chemistry sometimes. Just go to themathinstitute.com to find out more. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this ride. I will see you every Saturday at 7 p.m. unless there's something crazy like an election going on. My name is John Brookhagen. This is The Johnny Brew Show.